guarantee you 5 years from now, if we're having this conversation, we'd be talking about a whole different set of projects than what's being talked about now. So I think we need to look at the future and what's going to give the best rates, the highest quality, and the most reliability, as always, as a commitment and focus for this community.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Well, the idea that an investor-owned utility will always be updating, yeah, because that's how they make money. They make money by buying stuff. They borrow money at 6% or whatever it is, and the PUC allows them a return on that of 8 or 9%. So that's how they make money, is by spending money. And we end up paying that VIG, if you will, the difference between what they borrow the money for and what the PUC allows them to return there. I can't tell whether Black Hills would abandon that 200 megawatt solar project or not. I hope they wouldn't, because it's clear that the citizens of Pueblo want to have more renewable energy. The Phase 2 study and the cost estimates there are based on a 70% renewable energy portfolio. So if Black Hills gets their 200 megawatt renewable plan, they'll be at about 60 or 65% is the numbers I read. So they'll still be below what our analysts suggested you could have in your portfolio in terms of renewable energy. And I frankly don't know the ins and outs of rooftop solar, but I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people are involved in this campaign for municipalization that are not very happy with Black Hills and how they've treated the solar owners. These are rooftop solar owners that are very, very active in saying, hey, we need to municipalize this. And I suspect that's not because Black Hills has treated them well.
Can I respond?
Yeah, let's go with him and,
Okay.
and then you.
Randy just said that revenues dropped 10% due to solar investments. That's just flat out not true. I'm looking at the form, that the extensive document that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission requires be filed by utilities annually in April. The one that was filed in last April by Black Hills shows that their total electric operating revenues in 2018 were $250 million and change. Their total the same figure for the year prior was 249. Let's round it to 250 million. It was level. There has not been a 10% drop in gross revenues. That, in fact, is their high looking back between now and when they took over. When they took over, their gross revenues in their first year were $158 million. So their gross revenues have increased well over 57, 58% in the time that they've been here. Their number of customers is, because of those increases that they've passed along, their number of customers the growth has been very small. The number of industrial customers when they took over the system was 94. Now it's around 60. The commercial customers that they had were around 11,000, and they're about 11,000 now. That's over a 10-year period. They've grown up 0.6%. So their large revenues have not been recently hit by solar. What's been hit was the solar industry, and also buyers of solar, especially in the commercial sector, were hit hard when the rates were changed back in 2013, 2014. Those rates were changed to the disadvantage of any commercial customer who invested in solar energy. And so they'd made the investment. The assumption was A, the payoff was going to be A. They ended up having to deal with a payoff that was according to Plan B, and it made it much worse for those customers. So that kind of rate changes that were instituted by Black Hills. Large changes that are like big swerves on a black ice road, big turning on the steering wheel. You don't have to do that when you have local power. You can make small tweaks and less over a shorter period of time, rather than making large changes every 3 or 4 years, as is currently the case up at the Public Utilities Commission through the regulated process.
Okay, let me ask you a question here. First of all, I feel like you're kind of ganged up on 2 to 1,
and
you
I'm
only
fine.
get one
Well,
rebuttal. Do you want me to go ahead and have him speak his second piece, and then you get like maybe 4 minutes to respond to everybody? Is that good?
If I can make enough notes to keep track of everything. We're all struggling with this.
Sure.
But go
And
ahead. That's
we'll
fine.
give you extra time.
Okay.
then. Okay? What else would you have to say about these projects?
Well, I think I've said what I would about the projects. I mean, I think the Pueblo Board of Waterworks and the surrounding communities, if they end up taking that distribution system, would all be interested in a renewable energy portfolio, because the Phase 2 study commissioned by the city of Pueblo proves that that's the cheapest form of energy available. And as Steve indicated, those energy companies are willing to lock the price of that energy into long-term contracts. So you have a 10-year contract for energy at a certain price, or a 20-year contract. And think about it. Solar or renewable doesn't depend on the price of any natural resources like coal or natural gas. Once you have that renewable field in, the costs to operate it are not nearly what they are for any other kind of generating system, so.
Okay.
You know, in response to Steve, and, you know, I'm obviously not trying to go back and argue, but I'm going to say, numbers can say whatever you want them to say. I'm going to tell you this, that Black Hills, when they built that new power plant, it was, I think, $550 million. They had a big cost that shot the rates up. Then if you look at the graph, you can see from 2012 to 2019, you can see where the rates actually are $1 less than they were back in 2012. And that shot of rate increase was because they made a major investment. Now, they made that major investment because of XL. XL decided when they built Comanche 3 that they could make more money up in Boulder and Denver. So they made a business decision. And again, it should have been something that we on council forced that issue. We didn't even know that was available at the time. So now here's where we're at. We got Black Hills, they came in, they built a state-of-the-art. I think even in the study it says it's a state-of-the-art. It's about as good as you can get for a natural gas plant. They have zero coal. There's not any coal that they burn, it's all natural gas. Tri-State, who furnishes San Isabel Electric, I think they're at 40 or 50% coal. You got Colorado Springs. They've got a coal generation that they're going to have to re-gear up and everything along those lines. What's going to end up happening is those rates are going to have to go up when they start backloading with the natural gas. And if you want to live in a world where you buy off the market and that's your only source, it's great now. But what happens when that market goes up and rates shoot through the roof? So with us having, and again, with the mayor, if this happens to pass, I would highly recommend that you take that natural gas plant, because it gives us a dual situation. We can buy off the market when it's the cheapest, and when the rates go up, then we can produce our own energy. So those are things that, again, it's so complicated, but to sit there and just throw numbers out and say, Mr. Thurston, you're wrong because this says this, isn't something that I'm going to do with either one of these gentlemen. It's something that we need to really be respectful and realize that this is about informing the public, not confusing them with stats you can pull from different areas there.
Well,
Go ahead.
but when you say the rates, that they've lost 10% of the revenue because
Correct.
of solar, and that's not true.
Well,
That's the forms they file with the Fed. So Randy, you have to live with the numbers. You don't just make the numbers up.
and I'm not making
Okay,
numbers up.
let's move on here to something. Maybe we can agree on this one. This is about corporate citizenship. Black Hills has been fairly responsive to criticisms concerning cutoffs, and has become a better corporate citizen since criticisms were taken to the PUC several years ago. If the ballot issue fails and Black Hills is allowed to remain, what assurance do citizens have that they will remain a responsible corporate citizen? Mr. Thurston, you want to take that first?
Well, again, I'm going to pull some numbers out now.
Okay.
And when we talk about the shut-off rates, we talk about collections, we talk about policies. I have the Black Hills, and I also have the Pueblo Board of Waterworks. I have the greatest respect for the Pueblo Board of Waterworks, but they actually turn people's water off quicker than people get the electric turned off by 3 days. The actual numbers of the shut-offs for Pueblo Board of Waterworks in 2018 was 9.6%, and for Black Hills it was 7.04%. So again, when you have a perception that everybody's saying Black Hills is terrible, and I'm not for or against Black Hills. I'm for what's best with that situation, but these are actual rates right here in front of me.
What do you mean you're not for or against Black Hills?
No, I am not, okay, no.
What are we doing here then?
Okay. Okay,
the
I still
issue is-
have some time, so I'm going to respond.
Okay.
I am not for or against Black Hills. I am for the citizens of Pueblo that they can make an informed choice. This is not a political battle. This is serious stuff. And when I look at what the ballot issue says that was put out there, there is no protection for the citizens, the ratepayers of Pueblo. It was written to benefit Black Hills, the city, and the administration. It was not, and it's right here in front of me. So I'm here to say I support roof-type solar. I support green energy. I support those kinds of things. But I don't support the city taking over. I don't support having this illusion that if we turn it over to them, it's all going to be rosy. Right now, the Board of Waterworks, if you don't pay their bill, they can lien you. They lien you. If you don't cut your weeds, they lien you. If you're a government municipality, you can do those things. An investor-owned utility cannot lien a property. So when you talk about corporate citizenship, I think you need to look at both sides of that coin there.
Mayor Gradisar, I almost hate to let you talk, but go
Well,
ahead.
and I want to address the cutoff period, because I had something to do with that. When I got elected to the Board of Waterworks, the charitable organizations in this community came to me and the other newly elected member of the Board of Waterworks and said, at that time we had very lenient shut-off policies. People could go for 60 or 75 days. They came to us and said, don't let them do that. Because when you do that, you cut them off, the amount to get that water turned back on is so much. So, you know, if they're turning them off 3 days quicker than Black Hills, you know, I say that's fine. There's no problem with that at all. But when we did that, when we changed that policy, we also established a CARES program. That is a program that we pay to United Way and Catholic Charities so that they can help people who get their water shut off. I think it's funded now at $117,000 a year, the Board of Waterworks pays. What Black Hills was willing to do in the agreement that we were talking about with them, they were going to put in $40,000 a year for a CARES program. So in terms of which will be the better corporate citizen, I suggest to you that the board that's locally elected by the citizens of this community will be the better corporate citizen rather than the board that's in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Andrews, if the ballot issue fails and Black Hills is allowed to remain, what assurance do citizens have that they will be a responsible corporate citizen?
They don't have any assurance. First, I want to go back to the point that the mayor made about back in 2011. I talked recently with some people with dealing with affordable housing and housing support and the homeless and so on. And in 2011, they approached both entities, Black Hills and the Water Board. And they, in both cases, they needed relief. And the reception they got in 2011 was markedly different. The Water Board worked with them and came up with a plan. Black Hills did not. They kept on, the pressure kept building, the problems kept growing. And eventually, back in 2016, when the Public Utilities Commission came down here, they got an earful. They got 500 citizens showing up at a PUC commission meeting held here with 50 people testifying, 47% bellowing against Black Hills. So after that, another year later down the road, and the city council voted 7-0 in September to study their alternatives. Before that vote, we had tried to work with Black Hills and what we called our own Plan A, a better Black Hills. It didn't work. We had numerous meetings with Chris Burke and the executive director of or vice president of operations in charge here, and we were making a little progress, but very little. It was only after the 7-0 vote that 6 and 7 months later that Black Hills rolled out what I called their charm offensive, in which they tried to remake their image in the community. And they've invested more, they've made more donations, and they've made done more advertising, a lot more advertising. But there is no guarantee that when the vote happens in May 5th of this year, that if that vote is 4-2A to break away, that they will remain the corporate citizen that they have morphed into, which is somewhat better than the corporate citizen they were back in 2011. I would also mention that Randy talks about the city taking over. This is the Board of Waterworks, run by an elected board. If we have a problem, we can go down to the Board of Waterworks, which I intend to do, to verify that my voice will be heard as a customer of Black Hills if this transition moves forward. I'm not going to drive to South Dakota, and I've rarely participated in Denver at the Public Utilities Commission, so I feel I'll be much more involved.
Okay, Mr. Thurston, you want to try that one again?
Sure.
About corporate citizenship?
You know, I think when I look at corporate citizenship, you have to look at the complete picture. And right now, again, the rumor or the reputation or the indications and everything is Black Hills is the evil, they're terrible, they don't do anything, we'd be better off to do whatever we want to do. My stance has been that the worst thing we could ever do is to turn this over to government and municipalities, just because I understand how that goes. So when I look at what Black Hills had offered, they offered 5 years of no rate increases. And we're already now talking about that if the mayor had his plan going forward, you know, it's going to be 7-8 years before we have to then fund with the bonds to purchase of Black Hills at $1 billion. Well, if you take the cost of the power and you throw that $1 billion over 20 years, how can you sit there and say that the rates aren't just going to be out of control? It's a gamble and it's a risk. And I'm going to tell you one thing right now that I'm passionate about. Government is not in the business of making gambles. And this is a gamble. The mayor even said there's risk involved, but it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk. It's worth the risk. No, you don't gamble with taxpayers' dollars. And it's easy for taxpayers' dollars because it's not your money.
There are no taxpayers' dollars.
Okay.
There are no taxpayers' dollars in this proposal.
Okay.
I know Black Hills says that, and that's what their advertisements say, but there's no taxpayer dollars involved here.
When we go over the actual ballot question, we can get into those details. So I'm just going to say very clearly that this is something that an offer was made to keep the rates solid. They've also been a corporate partner in job creation. Job creation is the thing that's really going to balance us out. If we were growing responsibly over the past and we were at 150,000 population, I guarantee you our roads would be in good shape. I guarantee our property taxes would be lower, and I guarantee our utility rates would be lower. We have 47,000 people paying utilities. Colorado Springs has 255,000 people paying utilities. So again, this is something that it's not about blaming and making somebody the evil giant so we can sit there and look good at it. It's like we have a corporate partner here that says we'll invest $200 million in job creation. That's not something to sneeze about. So I think when it comes to corporate partnership, we need to have an open mind and not drink the Kool-Aid that this is an evil entity that we can't wait to get rid of and turn it over to the city that's going to just protect us. Even though they're gambling with our money, they're going to protect us, and we just need to trust them that there's no risk. Everything's going to be fine. Someday the rates will come down. The people right now in Pueblo are expecting rates to come down as soon as this takes place with the vote, and that's unfair to those citizens.
Okay.
Is that?
You can go next.
All right. So they never offered $200 million for job creation. They never offered $200 million. They offered to invest $200 million in their system that they would add on to our bills. They did offer that
And there's jobs that are created with that.
Well, over the course of the system, yeah, we were going to pay for that. We
Okay,
were going to pay that
but there were
$200
jobs
million.
there were
They
jobs that
weren't.
are created.
And they did offer 5 years of no rate increases. They were willing to freeze our rates at the highest level on the Front Range for another 5 years. That's what they were willing to do.
Okay. Mr. Andrews.
Randy talks about a gamble. Let's talk about public power, or at least moving away from investor-owned utility and the mecca of gambling, and that's Las Vegas. A major breakaway occurred during about 3 years ago. 3 large groups of casinos, MGM Resorts, Wynn Resorts, and Caesars Entertainment, which totals 24 casinos. They all left Nevada Power 3 years ago. That's the investor-owned utility in Nevada. Their combined electricity demand and electricity usage exceeds those of Pueblo and Pueblo County combined. The casinos separated because they wanted to increase their investment in renewable energy and they wanted to save money. When I contacted a key individual with MGM Resorts early this month, he stated that we are, quote, "We are very happy with the financial results of the deal we made to leave Nevada Power," end quote. So the bottom line in Las Vegas, which is the center of gambling in the nation, is that they didn't view their breakaway as a gamble. They viewed it as a wise financial move that gives them more control over one of their largest expenses. Same thing can and should happen here if we vote to break away. In terms of corporate partner and job creation, I point to AX2. AX2 was a project that was hyped by Black Hills conveniently just before a city council vote back in 2018. And essentially, it was out of whole cloth. This organization based in Denver, in a basement in Denver, was going to come up with a $100 million building south of town. They made a small investment in some land, a small down payment on some land. That project never proceeded, didn't look like it had any chance of proceeding, especially once Mr. Crocker was grilled by the Public Utilities Commission back in April of last year. That was a no-hoper. If that's the kind of investment that was supposed to produce 50 to 100 jobs in a data management center, I wouldn't want to bet on future investments where they're a key partner. It just did not work out well. It seemed to me like it was a head fake. I can't prove it, but it certainly wasn't something that ended up with a concrete benefit to the community.
Can I say something?
Quickly.
Okay, yeah, I want to disagree with Steve on AX2. I supported Black Hills' application in the Public Utilities Commission to get that economic development rate for AX2 because I thought that would be good for this community. But what that entire process showed me is that's why we need to municipalize, because they were not able to get an economic development rate for that company, let alone a general economic development rate that they were trying to do through the Public Utilities Company, through the Public Utilities Commission, and you can do that when you have a local board that controls that. You can have almost an immediate decision on an economic development prospect or an economic development rate. So they haven't helped our economic development because the industrial and the commercial rates here are just as high as the residential, the highest on the Front Range.
Okay, thank you. We have two more questions. One has come in over Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and ask that one first, and I think we'll just, because I have my little system here, we'll just start with Mr. Andrews and go that way rather than going through my little system. The question from Facebook is, how would the public power option affect jobs and the economy locally?
I think it would be a positive development. I think it would take time, but by and large, a few jobs will be brought back that are elsewhere. Call centers, customer service, those sorts of jobs would stay here. A big factor is that a lot of dollars that go out of state that go to South Dakota. You know, we send $120 million worth of electric bills, payments for our electric bills to South Dakota. A bunch of that comes back, but some of it doesn't. That process would end. A substantial portion, probably in the neighborhood of $20 million a year, hard to say, could be up, could be down from that, it's arguable, but a lot of that money would stay here that currently leaves. We wouldn't be supporting the construction of a $70 million headquarters up there. There's a number of things like investment, payments for federal income tax, a number of things like that are avoided. Legal fees would go down substantially. All of that money can then go back into stay in the economy and create more jobs. In particular, the manufacturing sector, if they had a break on their rates, could expand locally. It's been really hard, obviously, from the number of accounts where we've gone from 94 industrial customers to 60 over the last decade. It's hard to attract industrial customers here. If rates were more reasonable, we would be able to have more jobs. I just toured a couple of manufacturing plants the other day where a group of manufacturers is coalescing to raise their objections to Black Hills and their support for the 2A ballot initiative, or ballot amendment. So I expect that the job creation outlook would be substantially improved if we shift to public power.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the net effect, just in terms of if we municipalize the electric system, we'd probably have more jobs than we have now, simply because the Board of Waterworks doesn't have anybody that operates an electric system. They don't have any linemen, so all those people have to be brought on board. They're already working for Black Hills. So I don't think jobs would be lost in that. As Steve indicated, some of these jobs that have been outsourced to Rapid City or other places around the country instead of Pueblo would come back here to Pueblo in terms of customer service, collections, those kind of things. So, and I think, as I alluded to in my previous answer, that we'll be in a much better position as a community to offer companies that are interested in Pueblo some economic development rates on electricity, because if you have a business and energy is a big part of that business, Black Hills is not competitive. They are not competitive with the other communities on the Front Range that we compete with. And so I think if we municipalize this, and Black Hills doesn't have any friends on the PUC. When they go and try to get an economic development rate, the Public Utilities Commission said, no, we'll do that on a case-by-case basis. Well, in the case of AX2, it took more than 120 days from the time they started on an expedited basis to get an order, and by then the company had evaporated. So you can't have those kind of delays when you're trying to make deals for economic development. And I think this will be inure to our benefit if we municipalize this process and have that local control.
Mr. Thurston, once again, I wish you had some backup here.
Oh, no, seriously,
with
if
the
I
county,
have a little bit more time, since I'm going to respond to both of them here, but, I'm just going to say with economic development, with companies that are looking at coming in, Pueblo is prime right now because Denver's priced out of the market, Springs, East Coast, West Coast, they have lots of issues. But they look at certain things. They look at the financial strength, the balance statement on a city. They want to know, what's the report card on the city? Is it an A plus because they're diligent with their revenue and the decisions they make? Well, right now, the city of Pueblo with this financial situation is a much bigger concern than anything that has to do with rates. And I'm saying that because last year, 5.9 million, we were in the red. We have enough money in reserves for maybe 2 or 3 more years like that, and we're out of reserves. We've never been in that situation before. They look at that. They get the newspaper. They read the newspaper for a year to see, is this a community friendly, or are they battling and fighting, and are they bashing everybody, and are they blaming, and all of this kind of stuff? Well, I'm sorry. That's an issue. The financial strength of the city is an issue. And then you have to have the right energy of being able to have a place for them to go. Well, right now we have St. Charles development out there, and it's served by both San Isabel Electric and Black Hills. And again, when Vestas came in, we supported the fact that they're an alternate energy provider, and they're just going great. They chose Pueblo over anywhere in the world, and that was with the rates being not even being a factor. So I want to say that you look at Boulder, IBM right now is talking about leaving Boulder. So with Steve, I mean, he can always say there's a place here, a place here. I could do the same the other direction. But I'm just saying, when you have an IBM that's looking at leaving, and they're going to his way of doing things, but they're tired. It's a battle, it's a fight. How can they have dependability? How can they have consistency? How can they attract other people coming in when they're in litigation? When you have condemnation and you have litigation, I guarantee you, that is not conducive to people wanting to come in. And that's exactly what we're looking at doing for the next 7, 8, 10 years, to have that type of setting. We're going to miss the absolute prime time of growth and development if we decide we're going to play hardball and do condemnation. And it's up to the voters. If they want to be in litigation for that length of time, the mayor's talked about the gamble. If they're willing to gamble, people that are going to invest millions of dollars in a company, they don't go out to Vegas and say, we're going to roll the dice and see if we should come there or not. They make calculated decisions. And what is happening here is going to be a gamble because all the uncertainties that we talked about. So I know the mayor's anxious to share something here, so.
Well, because I've never said this is a gamble.
You told me it was a gamble when we were at the library.
I did not tell you it was a gamble. I might have said there's risks involved, but I never said it was a gamble.
You said it was worth the gamble. No matter what, it's worth the gamble.
No, I didn't say it was a gamble.
Okay, Mr. Andrews, do you have another point to make on the effect on jobs and the economy locally?
I think I've said it.
Okay.
Let's move on.
About you? You good?
Yeah.
The last question is about governance. And Mayor, since you're the current elected official, we'll just start with you. If citizens in Pueblo vote for municipalization, what will happen to Black Hills customers who reside in Boone and Canyon City and Pueblo West? Do they get to vote on this? And what happens to their electric service?
Well, the short answer is no. Those customers do not get to vote on this because this is a City of Pueblo franchise. So only the citizens who live within the city limits of the City of Pueblo get to vote on this. Now, will they be involved? Yes, because at the very least, I believe that the Board of Waterworks will look to acquire all of Black Hills electrical system in Pueblo County. So they'll be involved in that because the City of Pueblo or the Board of Waterworks will be providing energy to those customers that Black Hills currently provides energy to with their Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. That'll be one of the assets that's taken by the Board of Waterworks. So what the Board of Waterworks has talked about is creating a regional distribution authority and a regional power authority. So those other communities that are getting energy from Black Hills now, if they want to join us and abandon their franchise with Black Hills and acquire their own distribution system, they could become members of these regional authorities, which would have a governing board from each of those entities that would help make decisions about how the distribution system would work and how the power supply would work. So that's it in a nutshell. But only the voters in the City of Pueblo will be allowed to vote on this.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Andrews?
Yes, it's serendipitous that the Canyon City has a franchise agreement with Black Hills Energy, as does any 20 entities between Rocky Ford to Cripple Creek to West Cliff and back. Lot of communities. Canyon City is the second largest franchise holder. Pueblo West would be larger, but it does not have a franchise agreement with Black Hills. So Canyon City has their franchise agreement expired in November of 2017, and they are in fact looking with great interest and following what's happening downriver here. Rather than introduce a franchise agreement that was updated, rather than introduce that to the voters and schedule a vote last year, they postponed it to see how Pueblo was going to move with respect to this upcoming vote on May 5th. So Canyon City, I can assure you, is very interested in what's going on down here. There is a group that's active in Canyon City and working with the elected officials to keep them informed, to ask probing questions, and to let them know that they are in support of what's going on down here, in particular in support of the mayor's plan, working with the Board of Waterworks to leave Black Hills Energy in favor of forming a public power utility.
Okay, Mr. Thurston,
You know,
same question.
I love the question here because I think it hits a lot, but I'm going to throw something out for Steve to respond to when he gets a chance back. And now he talks about Canyon City, but the community that he actually lives in, because he's not even a Pueblo County resident, is not for the plan. He can't have them support it because they think it's a bad plan, and that's where he lives. I look at the situation in the actual ballot issue, and it says that the condemnation rights here in Pueblo can be expanded outside the limits, anywhere in Colorado. That's not legal for the city of Pueblo to condemn in Canyon City or in Ordway or whatever. And even if it was, guys, I'm going to finish, and you can have your shot at it here. You're creating bad neighbors. You're coming in and saying, we Pueblo, we know what we're doing, even though a lot of people in Pueblo have the same fear that we're going to make some major big mistakes that's going to come back. These communities aren't going to be supportive when their rates end up going higher because Pueblo pulls out. You're going to have lawsuits. You're going to have hold harmless agreements. You're going to have all of these things that are there, and there's no way the mayor can say that's not a possibility because it's a strong possibility. When I saw that in the ballot issue, that you can condemn outside anywhere location in the state of Colorado, I have never seen anything like that. I mean, I'd love to get an actual attorney that involves with this stuff that say that that's legal and you can do that, because how would we like to feel here in Pueblo if Canyon City came in and decided they want to condemn something in the city of Pueblo? I guarantee we'd be outraged. And even if they found a technicality to win that, you think that's going to create good neighbors with our neighbors? So when I see things in this ballot issue, which we'll get to at the end, I'm just appalled at the things that haven't been thought through and are put in here that put the citizens and the residents of Pueblo at major risk today, tomorrow, and in the future if this thing moves forward.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, they're not at major risk. The city of Pueblo indisputably has the ability to condemn assets outside the jurisdiction of the city of Pueblo that are necessary in order to deliver power to the citizens of the city of Pueblo. So I don't know where you got your legal advice from, Randy, when you say it's illegal for that to happen, but it's not illegal for that to happen, and that will play out if that's what has to happen. These other communities, they're not any happier with Black Hills than we are. And Randy says they're going to have to pay additional costs. Well, I think the Public Utilities Commission might have if these other communities have an opportunity to go with us and municipalize their distribution system and reduce their rates, and they decide, nah, we like being serviced by Black Hills for higher rates, I don't think the Public Utilities Commission is going to make the city of Pueblo pay for that if that's the choice those citizens made, that they want to stay with that company that's charging them the highest rates on the Front Range of Colorado. I just don't think that's what's going to happen.
I think we already decided that the rates aren't coming down. So I think you need to stop that conversation.
No, the rates are coming down.
When?
As soon as we pay for the, and they could be immediately if we pay for the, depending on what the price is that we have to pay for the assets.
So $1 billion added onto the bill for 20 years. When you're talking 20 or 25 years, you need to be straight with this.
We are being straight. You've got the numbers. Take a look at the Board of Waterworks resolution that was passed 2 days ago, Randy. They set forth there specifically about how much debt capacity there is, where that excess money is to pay for it. It's posted now on my Facebook page. It's posted on the Board of Waterworks page. It'll show you specifically how it's going to be paid for, how much it'll cost, and how it's going to be paid for.
And what's the number that you're using, and what's the interest rate that you're using?
$868 million is the purchase price.
At what rate?
I think 5 or 6%. I
Okay.
think they're different percentages. It's a lower rate than Black Hills gets it at.
Well, and you're saying that then covers what is currently being charged, so there's no rate reduction in that.
If we have to pay that absolute top value.
Well, but that's not absolute top, because it could be 1.1 billion.
How could it be that when no appraiser said that?
Well, we haven't even started the process.
Of course we have. Black Hills hired an appraiser in their study.
What I'm saying is you're talking that value will be determined down the road when all this litigation is
Right,
done.
right.
So there's no way you can say. So when you start making guarantees and promises, that's what I get upset over, because it is a gamble and there's unknowns.
Well, you say it's a gamble. It's not a gamble.
Okay,
There
so
are
it's not a
unknowns,
gamble.
certainly.
So if there's unknowns, then what do you tell the grandma and grandpa that are expecting the rates to go down the day after this thing, and they find out that it's not going to happen for 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years, and then you still have a debt paid on top of that? They're going to be upset. People
Nobody
need to know.
expects the rates to go down immediately.
Well,
Nobody
but
expects that
that's not
except
true.
you.
No. When I'm out talking to people, they say, what we were told is we vote yes, our rates are going to go down as soon as we vote.
Well,
that's not true.
Of course it's not.
Well-
and we haven't told them that.
Well, you might not have told them that.
Nobody's told them
Nobody's
that.
told them that.
Okay,
Nobody's
well-
told them that.
Well, I'm glad that you guys
That
have
may
so...
be the expectation, though, by some people, but I think that most reasonable people don't really expect everything to happen immediately. Do you have a final say on that, about what happens out to those other communities?
Yeah, a correction. I live in unincorporated Fremont County. Fremont County can't vote in the same way that unincorporated, or that Pueblo County outside of Pueblo can't vote. There are some communities, and I think there are a few downriver that can. So where I live in unincorporated Fremont County, I couldn't influence the vote one way or the other. When it comes to the condemning anywhere in the state of Colorado, let's be judicious here. That's not going to happen. The Black Hills Service Territory is from Rocky Ford to West Cliff to Cripple Creek. We're not dealing with the gas service territory, the 500,000 customers or so that Black Hills has. We're just dealing with these 96,000 meters. About a little over half of those are in Pueblo, and 2/3 or more are in Pueblo County. So that's the main focus of this, is Pueblo County first and foremost. And I believe at the end of the day, as the mayor described, if the deal is what we assume it would be, based on the 40 breakaways that have happened in the past, the deal is worth taking, then others in the service territory will want to join us.
Okay. Last question. Just tell me what you think we've missed, and I hope that somebody will tell us where we can find the wording of what's going to be on the ballot.
I have it right here.
Is it online somewhere? Where can we find it?
If you want to look at it.
I want to show it to the people on Facebook. I want them
Okay.
to be able
Yeah.
to find it themselves. Do you have any idea?
Well, sure, it's on the city's website. You might have to look a little bit to get it now because it's probably in the council resolutions and minutes, but we can make arrangements to have that ballot language put right on the top there so that people
think
can
that
go
would be
there and
very
get
helpful
that, have a chance to look at it before. And we can pass, the whole ordinance. It's a lengthy ballot proposal, and the ballot
Okay.
language is lengthy as well.
Okay.
But it's a pretty simple concept.
Okay.
You want to terminate the franchise and set up a municipal utility. That's what you need to know about 2A.
Let's go ahead and, let's see, I think we started with him last time. Let's start with you this time. Whatever we've missed, whatever you want to say, 3 minutes.
The mayor just said something very interesting, and he said, that's all you need to know is this terminates the agreement early. Well, as I read this, I see twice where it becomes a blank check. There's no PUC protection. The tabor is removed. There's things that are involved with this that the only thing, and the mayor has said this to me, that if you're not happy with the rates, you wait till the guy comes up for election and then you elect somebody else. That's the only protection in there. You have without voter approval. You have located in the state of Colorado. It doesn't say in a service area. I mean, if what he's saying is true, then why doesn't the agreement say in the service area or in the county? I take this very serious when I see a ballot issue because obviously there's more behind the scenes of a strategy than there is, because if this was truly what the mayor was saying, the words would be totally different. So I then look at who has authority here. He kept saying, well, it's the Board of Waterworks, it's the Board of Waterworks, it's the Board of Waterworks. I like the Board of Waterworks, and I want to keep the Board of Waterworks strong and doing its deal. But down here at the bottom, it says, the City Council be authorized to adopt future ordinances and resolutions, and shall the Board of Waterworks of Pueblo authorized to adopt future resolutions, and shall the mayor be authorized to take future action necessary to appropriately carry out the requirements, purpose, and intent of this measure. So there's no protection for the citizens. Yes, this is government. They can paint it any way they want to, but the mayor has his hands in it, the city council has their hands in it, and the Board of Waterworks do. The fact is that 5 years from now, or when after the rates, the city takes over, you get a board in there that wants to do special favors for the marijuana industry. So as the mayor said, you can create a special district. You can't with PUC. PUC won't let you do that, and you can't charge over a certain rate. So all of a sudden, the marijuana industry, they get a 50% discount on their power. Well, guess what? 100% of whatever the costs are gets split by the ratepayers. So now the other ratepayers are paying a higher amount. That's not fair. If the mayor wants to protect and not make this a gamble, put in there like Boulder did. And here's what Boulder put in. Boulder said that and the citizens went with it, that the rates will remain the same or less once this takes over. They also put an amount in there that it would not exceed a certain amount. This could end up being $2 billion Because once this is approved, it's out of the citizens' hands, and the citizens can't come and ever vote on this again. There's no reason for it to say without voter approval, and those you want to then, once you get control, do whatever you want, and the citizens are going to sit there and they're not going to be happy. But guess what? You have to wait till the board comes up for election and have it do it. That's not fair for the citizens of Pueblo to have this type of outrageousness in a ballot issue when they're sitting there talking about it's not a gamble. Why not put restrictions in there? Why not put controls? Why not put the things that you say is so clear for you? Why not put that in the agreement, Mayor?
Because that would repeat the mistakes that Boulder made, and it would drag it out like you want to drag it out, Randy. That's why we're avoiding those mistakes.
So you're
Okay, we're getting a
sacrificing.
little muddled we're
Okay.
confusing the timers here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
How much more do they have there? Is he good? Okay, all right. You're
All right.
next. All right.
So, you know why the Board of Waterworks? Because they're a 5-member independently elected board by the citizens of this community. When was the last time you got to vote for the Board of Directors of Black Hills Corporation? When was the last time you got to do that? When was the last time you got to vote for a member of the Public Utilities Commission? You never get to do that. Here you have direct control over the people who are going to set your rates. And how much better can it get than that? If you don't like what
bad.
they've done, you elect somebody else to do it. It's that local control that is very, very important. Randy talks about the PUC regulation. The PUC allowed Black Hills Energy to set the highest rates on the Front Range for the city of Pueblo. But for the fact that we had a commissioner from the city of Pueblo, they would have got it more than what they have now. But for that simple fact. So the PUC has a control. Let me give you just a short example. They allowed Black Hills to gamble. $31 million of our money hedging on the price of natural gas. And Black Hill, in their usual style, they guessed wrong. They must have bought contracts that the price of natural gas was going to go up, but it cost us over the last 5 or 6 years $31 million in those gambles that they made in the futures market. The PUC in 2016, 2017, Black Hills Energy filed documents with the Public Utilities Commission indicating this is what their financial situation was. In each of those years, they made significant mistakes, totaling about $30 million that were filed with the PUC. Nobody at the PUC looked at it. They overstated their profit by $30 million, and Black Hills didn't even realize it until we were at the bargaining table with them, and I started talking about the money they were taking out of this community, and they said that wasn't the case. So in July of last year, they went back and filed amendments to those documents that they did 2 years or 3 years previously. So don't think that the PUC is looking out for us. The only people that are going to look out for us is us, and the way we do that is by electing those members. Randy, the final point I want to make, I don't know whether you're a member of Pueblo Cares.
I'm not.
Okay, you're not, okay.
I don't-
Pueblo Cares is an organization set up by Black Hills Energy, their vice president here. They've been running ads since last December, I think. They have now established Pueblo Cares Issue Committee. And Pueblo Cares says we're not an issue committee, we don't have to disclose our donors. But Pueblo Cares donated $700,000 to Pueblo Cares Issue Committee. And I asked Vance Crocker yesterday or the day before, you want to tell us where Pueblo Cares got that $700,000 to donate to Pueblo Cares Issue Committee? Do you know where they got that $700,000?
I have no idea. I'm not involved with that.
You're not involved with Pueblo Cares?
No, not at all.
Okay. So
I'm a
I just think
concerned
the people of Pueblo, people are going to try to confuse you. It's a pretty simple issue. Do you want to terminate the franchise and set up a municipal utility? Don't listen to any of this stuff about all these unknowns, or it's a gamble or it's a risk. We're a strong community. We can do this complicated project. The Board of Waterworks is used to these complicated projects, and we can make this succeed if we want to.
Okay. Mr. Andrews, you get the last word on this.
Okay. I'll read something that I prepared as a final remark.
Are we doing final remarks yet, or?
Yeah, that was kind of it.
This
Okay,
is
I
it.
thought-
Are you good?
A
I've got some
number,
final remarks, too.
a number of large commercial and manufacturing businesses are frustrated and held back by Black Hills high rates. Consider the following statements by Dr. Malik Hassan, owner of New View Pharma, regarding the impact of high electric rates on his business. Quote, Pueblo is the poorest major city in the state and yet we have the highest electric rates. How would you ever attract a technology company to move here? If Pueblo was not my hometown, there is no way I would have put my facility here. I would have been much better off putting it in Denver. So you do it because it's your hometown. Frankly, I sometimes regret it because I'm at a serious competitive disadvantage because of the high price of power." End quote. Utility operations are large and involves long time frames. Utilities, especially water utilities, think in terms of decades. The Pueblo Water Board is used to supervising large and long-term projects and infrastructure investments. I trust that they will have the ability to supervise the operations of partners in the electric utility operations and maintenance sector. Those partners will do a good job of both keeping the lights on and of buying wholesale power at rates lower than they would have otherwise. In the spirit of trust but verify, I'll verify too. I plan to attend some water board meetings to confirm my assumption that citizen input to the process will be considered at the highest level. On May 5th, I encourage your listeners to vote for ballot question 2A. Doing so will bring to Pueblo the power to decide the long-term future of our electricity system. I urge you to see a vote for 2A as a vote for a more positive future for Pueblo, for your kids and your grandkids. Public power should bring us local control, lower cost per month for customers, state-of-the-art rate design for all customer classes, the power to choose our sources of power generation, the ability to set fair policies for our most disadvantaged residents, and reliable power, since public power nationwide is more reliable than investor-owned utilities. I'll conclude with a quote from experience. Consider the case of Winter Park, Florida, where the city voted in 2005 to break away from its investor-owned utility. Originally, Commissioner Barbara Devane was against the idea. Eventually, she supported it. At the 10-year anniversary celebration of choosing public power, she said, quote, "It was the best thing the city has ever done. I'm glad we took it on." Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I think I'm going to let you go next and just finish with finishing remarks if you prepared some, and then we'll let him finish because.
Yeah, I didn't prepare any finishing remarks, as I indicated. I spent the first year of my administration trying to make a deal with Black Hills Energy that would avoid this election for municipalization, including such things as, you know, why don't you agree to sell us your assets at the end of the franchise and we'll just not have to do it now. We'll just wait until the franchise is over. No consideration at all. They've taken the position that they're not for sale, and that's their right. They have a right to do that, just as the city of Pueblo has the right to exercise our option to purchase their assets under the Colorado Constitution, the Colorado statutes, and the franchise agreement. So this is not like a typical real estate transaction where the seller has unrealistic expectations and appraisal comes in and the deal falls apart. Here, what happens is this unrealistic seller is going to have to take the appraised price that's determined by the courts. So this is not going to be some out of control, willy-nilly, you know, a wild man's going to determine the price of this asset that where the city of Pueblo is going to acquire. As I indicated earlier, this is going to be determined by a Pueblo judge and a Pueblo jury after getting appraisals from both Black Hills Energy and from the Board of Waterworks about what the value of those assets are. And that's, you know, obviously opinions, but if you can't reach an agreement about what the sales price is, that's what happens all the time, is appraisals are done and a judge or a jury will make that determination. So this is not the kind of thing where the sky's going to be the limit and we're going to have to pay whatever Black Hills wants. That's not the case at all. The best evidence we have with respect to the value is in the Phase 2 study that used the highest possible value for Black Hills assets in reaching a determination. And using those highest possible values, this transaction is very, very feasible for the city of Pueblo. So I encourage you to vote yes for 2A, vote for 2A.
Thank you. Mr. Thurston, you get the last word
All
here.
right, thank you. The citizens are confused. The citizens want to do the right thing. They just want to know. It's good to have this dialogue on two sides because I'm not making the mayor wrong in what he's saying. But I'm just saying that there's not everybody that shares that feeling of that it's worth the risk. The city is not qualified to operate, maintain, and upgrade a $1 billion utility. It's not. I commend the Board of Waterworks. I commend them. They've done a great job. But a Board of Waterworks deals with water. It's like having a brain surgeon do heart surgery. They're both professionals in what they do, but you can't cross over. The utility is very complicated. Then you throw in the dynamics of it being a network. Then you throw in the dynamics of doing a condemnation. When I was on council, we condemned properties twice in 8 years, and I hated it both times because it's not what you want to do. You don't want to create that energy. Looking at the financial state of the city, to operate, you better have some deep pockets. The Board of Waterworks has $22 million in reserves, and they've got a ranch that's worth $10 million that they're going to sell. You already look at Boulder at getting up to the $30 million number, and they're not there yet. So you can say all day long, it's not the same. Well, it is the same. There's unknowns. The people of Boulder sought the same thing. There's no risk in this. The courts are going to agree with us. There's no problem. Well, you get good attorneys on both sides that cost a lot of money, and it's not that simple. I mean, Mr. Gradisar, you're an attorney. 2 or 3 more years with the state of the city, the reserve will be gone. The Board of Waterworks with their reserve isn't something that really needs to be looked at in that this is a solid situation. I look at the streets of the city, I look at the animal shelter, I look at, well, Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan is you know about Flint.
What's that got to do with this?
Well, I'm just going back with this, that this was a city-owned utility, water. They didn't have the financial strength to make it work. Now it's over and done with. They have to have bottled water because they don't have the financial ability. Nobody's moving into Flint, Michigan. We don't need to be a Flint, Michigan. We don't have the strength. And again, and Mr. Mayor, I didn't laugh when you were talking.
Well,
but no.
but that's...
You can pick and
Okay.
choose what you want to focus on, and I have an equal vote to say something out there and let people make a decision. My not wanting to support a municipal government has to do with the enterprise, the last enterprise. You know when the last city enterprise took place was in 2009. And it was to make it the PMI, a city enterprise. Vera Ortegon said it's going to cost the taxpayers $0. She was just as sure as the mayor is sitting here saying, this is a good deal, don't worry about it, trust us. She said $0. Well, 2 years later, they pulled a plug on it at the cost of $3 million. So when I am saying things, this is not as clean as it is. People need to make a decision. Rates are not going to come down. So if you're going to think, if you vote yes, your rates are going to come down, they're not. So I'll go ahead and end on that note because, Ruth, I appreciate your patience on this. But people need to know this could go on for probably for another hour.
Sure.
Because the people out there listening, they're grabbing onto every word that the mayor's saying, every word that I'm saying is what's real, what's true, what's not. And I'm just saying, please do your research. And if you don't know, you don't understand the ballot, you don't understand the facts, vote no. If you know everything, you read the ballot and you say, oh, this is great. There's no protections, there's no caps, but it's okay because we trust the mayor. Then do what you want to. But at least vote no until you know.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Pueblo, thank all 3 of you for being here tonight. I think that'll conclude this presentation.
Ruth, thank you.
Thank you.